Now, adding an amplifier to your car audio system can be an expensive endeavor. Not only do you have the cost of the amplifiers, you have to consider the wiring and also the cost of installation. That's why we're going to talk about these two amplifiers. Now, the MIDI amp category is not new to our industry. It's been around for a very long time. But these amplifiers offer very unique features that some of the other amplifiers do not. So stay with us as we break these down. Hey, what's up? My name is Josh. I'm with Breaker Stereo and Performance. Welcome to our channel that reviews all the best in car audio, performance, suspension, and more. Because we don't drop stock. And if you're like us, or stock just doesn't cut it, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Now, Alpine does have a few power stack amplifiers in their lineup, including a set of weatherproof 4-channel and mono, and the original KTA-445U and 445A. Now, these two amplifiers, the KTA-450 and the KTA-200M, are unique in the fact that they can actually bolt on to the back of Alpine's ILX-W670 or the old ILX-W650, making installation relatively easy. Now, normally with installation on an amplifier, you have to consider, like I mentioned earlier, wiring and also installation. Now, these come with most of the wiring except for the power and the ground. You will need to extend that from the amplifier to the battery in either a 12 or a 10 gauge. Now, make note the KTA-445 can actually plug into the back of any Alpine radio and you don't need any additional wiring. But that amplifier is a little bit more, coming in at $279. So let's go over pricing now. So this particular amplifier retails for $219 and the monoblock is $199. Now, normally with amplifiers, a wiring kit can range anywhere from $75 to $100, depending on the length, but you definitely want to stay away from that CCA stuff. You want to make sure you get OFC, and then consider the cost of installation. Or if you're installing yourself, consider the time. With a standard 4-channel amplifier, you can expect to pay about $150 just on labor. On something like this, where this will actually attach to the back of the radio or get installed behind the dash, the cost should be considerably less, about half. If you take the cost of the wiring and the installation, then you do have some savings here. Now, if you're looking at this, you may go, okay, this is only 50 watts times 4. My head unit does 50 watts times 4. Okay, so those of you that know that 50 watts times 4 on your head unit is peak power and not RMS. Whereas the 50 watts on this amplifier is actually RMS and not peak. And if you look on the back of this radio, it's actually only 16 watts RMS times 4. So that's more than 3 times the power in this amplifier versus your standard head unit. Now, for $219, you can actually get a pretty decent amplifier in a name brand, but what makes this special is that it's a lot smaller and it does have some features that we're going to go over right now that make it pretty unique. And if you have that Alpine W650 or 670, this is kind of a no-brainer if you're not looking to do a super large system. Now, in my opinion, if you wanted to do, let's say, a 500-watt amplifier for your subwoofer or subwoofers, this would be a great complement to something like that. Now, if you're going with a big 1500-watt amplifier, 2000-watt amplifier, this is probably not the direction you want to go in. But for a simple system with 1 or 2 subs, either 10s or 12s, this will actually work out really good. Okay, we've been focusing on the 4-channel, so let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit more. All right, so I'll just read off the back of this thing as far as features are concerned. So this is a highly effective digital circuit design, which basically means that it's a D-class amplifier. That's obvious because it's small and efficient. Adaptive feedback, global modularization, topology. I have no idea what the hell that means. So let's just move on to the next thing. This provides up to 100% more dynamic power when music demands it. Okay, so here's what this means. When you listen to music, it's dynamics. So the demand on the amplifier is not consistent like when you're playing, let's say, a test tone. So when the music is going, you'll get peaks and you'll get valleys and peaks and valleys. And this basically means that when it does get that peak, that it will kick in the high gear and give you the extra power that you needed. Now, Alpine even says it will double on demand. So that 50 watts will actually be 100 watts, but not at a sustained level, right? Because again, music is dynamic, so there is the ebb and flow of the music. Just when it does ask for the peak, it will be able to perform. Now you have front and rear variable gain controls, like every other amplifier in the world, and you do have selectable high or low pass inputs. Now you can run this as a 2-channel or 4-channel, and there are high pass crossovers, both front and rear, and then there is an auto turn on with DC offset for remote sensing. Another thing to note is this will do 50 watts times 4 RMS at less than 1% distortion at either 4 or 2 ohms. So most aftermarket speakers are going to be 4 ohms. Now there are the exception with brands like Blam, and there's some other companies out there that do make 2 ohm speakers. And if you're adding this amplifier to factory speakers, if they so happen to be 2 ohms, you're gonna get the same power across the board, 50 watts times 4. Now both of these amps do come with a bracket that attaches to the back of the W650 or the W670. And when they're stacked, it's about as deep as a standard double-DIN radio with a disk drive. Okay, so let's move over to this guy here. This is the KTA-200M. It's 200 watts times 1 into either 4 or 2 ohms, and that's at less than 1% distortion. What some of you might be thinking is it's not a ton of power. Well, it's not a ton of power, but remember, it does have that DPP circuit, so when you do need the demand from the amplifier, it will supply it, and Alpine says 100% of the capacity will be increased, so it actually will be about a 400 watt amplifier. Now, they do sell this in a package with their S-Series woofers. Now that S-Series is going away, or is actually gone away, and the S2s are now available, still rated at the same power, but they did match this up with the S-Series 10 and 12 in the Halo box. Now, the Halo box, of course, is a vented enclosure, so it's gonna be more efficient than the sealed box, and I wouldn't recommend running those woofers with this amplifier in the sealed box because you are gonna need a little more power to push that in there. But in that vented box, because of its efficiency, it actually sounds pretty good. So a nice little setup, let's say in your vehicle, if you did an Alpine head unit, the 670, this amplifier for the bass, you can run the power of the 670 to the inside speakers, get this amplifier, attach it to the back of the 670, and run a 10 or a 12 in a vented enclosure. That would be a pretty cost-effective system. All right, so let's read off the back of this as well and see what features it has to offer. Okay, again, highly effective digital circuit design. Again, just D-class amplifier. And then again, adaptive feedback global modularization topology. There are like 4 very complex words in here, and then they put it in a sentence of only 5 words, so it's really confusing. So I'll do what I normally do when I'm confused on something. I'll go ahead and go to my chat GPT and see what it says, and maybe you can break it down to where we can actually understand what the hell that means. Okay, this actually makes sense. So let me read this. Okay, I asked, what does adaptive feedback global modularization topology mean in relation to a car stereo amplifier? It reads, that term, in a car stereo amplifier context, that likely refers to a sophisticated circuit design that dynamically adjusts feedback to optimize audio performance. It suggests a system that can adapt its feedback mechanism globally, considering various factors to enhance sound quality in different conditions. Okay, so basically it's the DPP, which is the dynamic peak power, which I already explained, and they just made it super duper confusing with that sentence. Okay, let's continue. Variable gain control, and then selectable low pass filter, and a fixed subsonic filter, which this has and the 4-channel doesn't. Okay, so let's go ahead and open these boxes and check them out. All right, so you have your manual, okay, and then you have the amplifier itself. So this is about the width of a double-DIN radio. Not exactly the width of a double-DIN radio. Now the older KTA-450 is a little bit longer, so they don't make a bracket for that particular one. I do like it because it does have the harness, which you can go in and out, and it's pretty easy installation. And in most cases with that amplifier, you don't need to run an additional power wire. Now, you have to check your car's circuitry. The radio itself is about 5 amps, okay? This particular amplifier is 20 amps. So if you go into your fuse box and you see that the radio circuit is isolated and it's 25 amps, then you can actually use the same power wire that's coming into the radio and just split it. Now, I think it would be better to run an additional cable when doing so. Now with the KTA-450, that's actually a little bit less on the amperage. It's 15 amps, okay? A lot of times the circuit in most vehicles it's gonna be about 20. Now keep in mind the radio again is about 5, and if the 445 is 15, that's a total of 20, then you should be good, and then that will just plug and play and you're good to go. You don't need to run another wire. This does draw a little more current than the other one, so it is recommended, especially if the circuit in your vehicle for your radio is under 25, to run a new wire, okay? All right, so I wanted to cover that. Now this is the wiring. Okay, and then these brackets right here will actually go on the side. So if you're not using the Alpine radio or those particular Alpine radios and you want to mount this somewhere, you just put these brackets on. That gives it little ear tabs to go ahead and mount it down, okay? All right, so this is the cabling. So the power is actually pretty thick. I want to say this is about a 12 gauge, 14 gauge, all right. So 14 gauge here. This actually plugs into the side and it's recessed here, which is nice. Okay, so you're not going to have that sticking out like that. So if you are putting this in the dash on the back of that Alpine radio, when you slide it in, okay, you'll be able to slide it in and not have to worry about these wires here, okay? And then this is the bracket needed to attach to the W650 or the W670. So that would go like that, and then the radio clamps on there. Now the crossover settings on this amplifier are much different than most of your other amplifiers there on the market, because you normally have a little pot that you adjust to pick the frequency in which you want to cross over. If you can see, there are dip switches on here, and according to this little diagram, you hit these dip switches in order to either leave off the crossover or set it at, our options are 60, 80, and 120. Now they do give you the gain here for the front and the rear. And that's about all that this has. And again, these are going to be high pass crossovers because you're going to be using this for your mids and your highs. All right, that's enough of this. Let's go ahead and take a look at the monoblock amp. All right, same thing, just same chassis, of course. All right, you're gonna have all the same cabling, all the same brackets, so I'm not gonna go over that. Let's just take a look at the side of the amplifier. Okay, so very similar crossover setup. You have the dip switches in order to set that low pass crossover. And the settings are either off, 60 hertz, 80 hertz, or 120. And then you do have that gain right there. Again, it does have a subsonic filter, already built in and already set. Okay, so one of the biggest questions that we get here down at the store is this. What's the difference between, let's say, an amplifier like this, a mini amplifier, and just a standard amplifier, let's say, like this? If we're talking 4-channel, this amplifier here is 50 watts times 4, is much bigger than this, but rated at the same as far as 4 ohms is concerned. This is 50 watts times 4 into 4 ohms. If you do drop it to 2 ohms, you do get 75 watts times 4. Again, that's a unique application, so let's just talk about the 50 watts times 4. What is the difference between this amplifier and this amplifier? Because essentially, they are the same price, $219, $219. Now, yes, you're gonna pay less on installation here, and yes, you're gonna pay less on wiring here. But let's say the difference is about, okay, so on the wiring here, you're probably gonna spend about maybe 30 bucks. Here you're gonna spend about 80 bucks, so 50 bucks there. Installation, this is about 150. This will probably run you about 75. So that's 75, so it's $125. What is the difference, or what do I get more, let's say, with $125 if I go with this amplifier versus this amplifier? That's a question that we do have to answer a lot. And here's my answer. This is gonna have a little more headroom, meaning this will probably be able to play a lot longer at higher volumes than something like this. Now, this does have that circuitry that we talked about, but that is adaptive to the music as you're moving along. Now, in my opinion, or at least my hypothesis, is this. If you're playing music for a long duration, that this amplifier is going to be able to sustain that higher volume more consistently than something like this, okay? So that's my own personal opinion, just kind of based on my experience with these two amplifiers, or an amplifier like this versus a standard amp. But this is cool, right? It's small. You can put it on the back of that radio or install it behind the dash, and it's Alpine. So I do like that factor. We do sell a lot of these, but if I had to say between the two, we're selling more of this style amplifier, not this particular one, this style amp versus something like this. But there is a market for it. We sold lots of them. They work out really good. If you're looking for a good, quick upgrade and you want to have more power than what's in the radio, then this is a great solution. Now, let's talk about the monoblock amp, because why would someone go with something like this versus a standard monoblock amplifier? Because there's a lot of monoblock amplifiers you can get for 200 bucks, because this is retail for 199, and you're gonna get more power than something like this. So we definitely sell more of the 4-channel than we do this monoblock amp, for sure, hands down. This is kind of a specialty amplifier. Like, it's cool to have a small amp like this, and you match it up with a single woofer and a vented box, and it works out pretty good, and it's compact. So if you don't have a lot of space and you don't want a big amplifier, let's say underneath the seat or in the trunk, then this is a great solution if you're looking to add some decent bass. We'll leave links in the description below, taking you directly to each product page. So if you want more information or if you want to buy them, just go there and check it out. All right, so I hope this video makes sense to you guys. I hope this helped. And if it did, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Again, my name is Josh. I'm with Breaker Stereo and Performance. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.